Abundant mindset is the belief that there's always enough. At its core, an abundant mindset is rooted in faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your ability to create, and ultimately faith in God's provision. It is literally impossible to outperform the view that you have of something. If your perspective around money is negative, scarce, and limited, what do you think your results are going to be? I know a lot of you probably already know this and/or are doing these things, but the consistency is the difference. Hi, I'm Justin Buonamo, and this is Wisdom is Wealth. Wisdom is Wealth is designed to give you guys practical insights, modern strategies, and even timeless philosophies around gaining wisdom in your life. The wiser we get, the wealthier we will become. This podcast really is inspired by the book of Proverbs in the Bible, which was written by King Solomon, who prayed to God for wisdom and as a byproduct became the wealthiest person to ever live. If he was still alive today in present day, he'd be worth $1.3 trillion with a T. Not because he prayed for wealth, but he prayed to God to give him wisdom. And as he grew wiser, as a byproduct, he grew wealthier, particularly financially, but not just stopping there, in every facet of his life. And in my own life, I have realized that the wealthier I become, it's truthfully just because I have become wiser in life. I'm gonna bring on guests that are incredibly successful, incredibly amazing human beings, and have an amazing financial wealth that they've grown for themselves, and they're gonna share wisdom on their life experience in totality in hopes that something becomes valuable for you to implement in your process, in your life, and in your journey, and see how wisdom truthfully is wealth. Welcome back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth. I'm super excited about this episode because this topic is near and dear to my heart because it's helped me so much with my life in totality, but definitely with my finances. And it was something that was very challenging for me at first because I'm a very black and white person by trade, or at least that's what I thought for years. I think just with my background between athletics and academics and working for Johns Hopkins, I really established this like black and white mentality, or what some people would say very masculine. And so tapping into the feminine, the healthy feminine over the years has been drastically important for every facet of my life, but particularly finances. And so today's topic is around abundance and having faith in life, right? But definitely in your finances. And a lot of you, especially my spiritual people listening to this, I know you know what the abundance mindset is, and you've probably heard this a bazillion times, but stick with me. Don't use it as an excuse to skip this episode, because I think that I'm going to give you different iterations and explanations that may hit a different way than how you've heard it in the past. And then also just the expert correlations from the topic to your finances. And so stick with me. I think you're going to get a lot from this, even if you are an expert on the abundant mindset and know the difference between that and scarcity and how that can play out in your life. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read off of my notes here because I've got an awesome definition of the abundant mindset. And I was like, man, I could rip this off of memory. I could do my best to memorize it or pretend like I'm not looking at notes, right? But I just sometimes some of these points on this podcast that I want to make them to the best of my ability, and trying to freestyle it sometimes, though serves me most times, it just doesn't serve me in some of the points that I really want to make sure I get across. And so my video editor absolutely loves when I read off of a paper. It's like, he doesn't. Well, I'm gonna do it anyways. I know the majority of you guys, you're you're listening to this instead of actually seeing the visual. So anyways, I'm going to read, a little definition, a little blurb of the abundant mindset that I think is just so powerful. And then I'm going to get into this and start giving my iterations, my explanations, and my correlations. And so, abundant mindset is the belief that there's always enough. I love that point, that there's always enough. I could really just stop there. The abundant mindset is the belief that there's always enough. Right? Enough money, enough opportunities, enough success, enough resources for everyone, and including you, which is, I think, a very important part. It's the opposite of scarcity mindset, which operates from fear, lack, and limitation. And so when you have an abundant mindset, you trust that things will work out and that setbacks are temporary and that your potential isn't capped. You trust that things will work out. Setbacks are temporary, if not a part of the process. I always say when things start to become expectations, they're no longer problems. So setbacks are definitely part of the process, right? And that your potential isn't capped, that you believe in yourself, that you're not only worthy and deserving of more, but you're first and foremost capable of more. And so you see money as a tool, not a source of stress. Money is a beautiful tool once you learn how to utilize it. And so you focus on solutions, possibilities, and growth rather than dwelling on obstacles or what you lack. My mentor always says to me, he's like, we can either focus on how we're not hitting the goal, or we can focus on how we're actually going to start hitting it. And just that shift right there. Right? You have to use your time, money, and energy on things anyways. You might as well pick it on things or choose to use it on things that have a quality return on investment, like believing things are going to work out. Right? And so at its core, an abundant mindset is rooted in faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your ability to create, and ultimately faith in God's provision. Right? I really almost think abundance and faith are synonymous. Right? And so you cannot be faithful when you're fearful, and when you're fearful, you're scarce. Right? So what that's saying is when you're fearful, you're scarce, you can't be abundant. Right? And so that's why in a lot of ways, I feel like abundance and faith are synonymous. It's just believing that God has your best interests in mind. And if you play your part, of course, things are going to work out, right? Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Doesn't mean you're not going to have some setbacks. God grooms us in tension. He gives us our mountains as medicine, right? But at the end of the day, things will work out. And so what's your current relationship, right, with abundance? Do you feel like you naturally operate from abundance, or do you catch yourself naturally operating from scarcity? And most people, which sucks, but we naturally operate from scarcity. Even myself, when I have to make a conscious effort every day, right, to shift my energy into abundant mindset, into abundant energy. And the results are drastically different. Yes, with my finances, right, but in every facet of my life. And so as I move on here, right, I'm looking down, at my notes, and the last thing is you believe that as long as you're doing your part, opportunities, wealth, and success will flow to you in divine timing. And so that's just a beautiful depiction, I think, of, or more so correlation of tying the abundance mindset into our relationship with God, which I think is really just almost the basis of it. It's faith, right? And maybe I'll do a different full podcast episode on this. So one of my favorite questions, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, is I constantly ponder, what is the healthy balance of surrender and self-reliance? Or self-reliance, or more so what the Bible calls free will, right? Like we have to play our part, but we also can't do too much when we're playing God and not letting God be God, right? But that's also not a license to be like, oh, God, take the wheel. I'm going to sit on the couch and eat Cheetos all day and do nothing, right? It's like, what's that healthy balance? And so I truthfully believe when you can find that healthy balance and understand what God's calling you to do with your free will, with your self-reliance, and if we really believe that God is who he says he is, then of course things are going to work out. You're playing your part, you're allowing him to play his, right? Of course things are going to work out. And so I want to move into understanding the power of your mindset. And one thing I really want you guys to understand is it's literally impossible to outperform the view that you have of something. It is literally impossible to outperform the view that you have of something. And so if your perspective around money is negative, scarce, and limited, what do you think your results are going to be? Right? Probably fairly similar. And it's because our thoughts are so powerful. There's a bunch of science and studies that show, right? And even the Bible says this too. I think science and the Bible agree on a lot of things. This is one of them, right? And it's that your thoughts work very hard to create a physical counterpart, AKA reality. And so if we're constantly thinking of lack, or money's going to run out, or we don't have enough, or we're bad with money, or we don't deserve more money, or whatever other negative connotation or thought process that you can put around money, I promise you what you're doing is manifesting that as your reality. That's what you're attracting. It's because every thought carries energy. Every single thought carries energy, or what would be called an energetic vibration. You hear people say all the time, oh, like I like his vibe, or I like her vibe, or like, their vibe was off, right? It's the energy that they're carrying gives off a vibration, right? And so the energy that we carry gives off a vibration, and what we attract is a match to the vibration that we're giving off or putting out into the world, right? It's the law of attraction, right? What we put out into the world is what we're going to get back. And so if we're constantly putting negative energy out in the world through having scarce, limited, fearful thoughts about money and life in totality, that's what we're going to attract back. But the beautiful part, though, is the power of the mind and the thoughts go both ways. It goes both ways. And so, yeah, negative for sure. And unfortunately, that's how it's working in most people's lives. But if you can make a conscious effort to shift it, you can do it for the positive as well, right? I'm constantly working on my abundance energy, right? My abundance mindset and the energy that I'm giving off. And it's pretty awesome to see what I attract back, right? But I also know the days that I'm off, right? I can see it numerically, statistically, and even intuitively, right? The lack of results that I'm attracting in my life because my energy's off. And so what I want to teach y'all here, are some ways to shift from the scarcity energy to the abundant energy to ultimately get better results in all areas of our life, but particularly with your finances, right? You get what you focus on is simply what I'm saying here, right? You attract back what you put out there. And so how do we stop putting out negative energy so we can start attracting better results? So the first thing is awareness, right? I think that is the biggest thing when it comes to making change. You first need to become aware first. And so I think there's this like a stage that we have to go through. We just got to basically watch ourselves from a neutral standpoint, right? I do it often, and I've done it many times throughout my spiritual journey. But when I first started working with one of my mentors years ago, he was like, indefinitely, what we're just going to do is we're just going to spend time in the awareness stage, right? Where you catch yourself, let's just say particularly around the scarcity mentality, like, ooh, there I go again. Ooh, man, I'm being fearful right now. Ooh, that's definitely coming from scarcity energy right there, right? And it's really hard to do, but you have to do it from a neutral standpoint, right? You're just observing yourself. You're just being aware. You're not judging yourself. You're not like, oh, there I go again, big idiot here, all this negative scarcity energy, the sky is going to fall and look what I'm doing to me and my family. It's like you got to do your best to not do that, to be neutral. Right? And so then once we're aware of how things are playing out in our life, now we can start making change. And I think two easy ways to make change are to speak abundance over your life and act in abundance over your life, right? Speaking of abundance is just catching yourself around negative, scarcity, limiting limiting thoughts and just shifting them, right? And so instead of saying, oh man, this month's a little tight, you can shift that to be like, man, I'm really grateful that we were able to cover the expenses that we had to cover, and I trust that God is just going to provide for the rest as long as I keep playing my part, right? I know it's hard. I'm not saying this is easy, right? This is why okay, let me get my words together here, right? This is why so little amount of people live in abundance every day, whether that's objectively or subjectively, right? And definitely financially. I think this is one of the biggest bottlenecks for people when it comes to their financial situation, because money is energy, right? It is much more than numbers, spreadsheets, the stock market, budgets, right? A big part of money, if not the most important part, is the energy behind it, the energetics behind it. And so just doing your best to speak differently, right? When you see, a number come in, I was just talking about this with my wife recently. She heard the pricing of the flooring for one of the rooms that we're doing, and her initial knee-jerk reaction was, what? Like it's just this crazy number. And I think the number was like $650. Not to call my wife out here, but I was like, babe, we budgeted $900 for that. That's actually normal. That should have been expected, right? We've done so many renovations by now. You should probably know that like that size room is going to cost that amount, let alone the fact that we budgeted for that. It just was her knee-jerk reaction, that scarcity limited mentality that we're both working through. That was like, what? Like responded with negative energy, responded with negative surprise. It's like, you got to check yourself on that instead. But like right before you say that, a change would be like, oh, great, that's $250 under budget. Two completely different energies, scarcity versus abundance. So not to call my wife out here because I got plenty of things I got to work on, but it is the number one conversation we're having around money in our household on a day-to-day basis, because we've got the best systems and strategies in the world, and thankfully we've got a lot of money saved up and an amazing couple of businesses that provide us a lot of money, right? So our highest leverage point right now is the energetics behind it, the mentality behind it, and just asking ourselves, what are these middle-class mindset things that we do, right? Which is maybe synonymous for scarcity mentality, right? So that it's been rooted in us through over the years that we can start becoming conscious of and becoming conscious of changing. And so the words, right? And then the way you act as well, right? You truthfully believe that money was coming to you, that your financial breakthrough was on the way. How would you act? I always ask myself, if I was being my most abundant self right now, how would I show up? How would I act? How would I lead? And so speaking and acting in a manner that's abundant, right, I think is huge for attracting better results. And so I think the biggest thing here though is instilling habits in your life that actually increase your abundant mindset, right? Because like, yes, you can catch yourself and speak better and act better, but if we are instilling habits in our life that ultimately over time make the abundant mindset the default mechanism instead of having to consciously switch to it, right? Then that's where we're going to start getting the biggest bang for our buck. And so at first it's going to be catching yourself, switching to abundant mindset, catching yourself in scarcity, switching to abundant mindset. But over time, if your habits are quality, particularly quality ones that produce a higher abundant mindset, then hopefully the abundant mindset, the abundant way of living just becomes your default mechanism, right? And not something that you have to switch into. And so some habits that really help me. Number one is I like to, when I wake up in the morning, I don't touch my phone. Right? I do not look at my phone for at least the first 30 minutes, sometimes the first 90 minutes. Why? Is because when you wake up and you look at your phone immediately, you're reacting to what's on your phone, right? Whatever is on your phone is now controlling your energy from the morning, and most likely going to control your energy throughout the day now, because a lot of times how you start your morning is how your day goes, right? So if we can optimize our energy in the morning, shift to that abundant mindset in the morning, it's going to take you throughout the day, right? And so a lot of times when you wake up immediately and you check your phone, the things that we're seeing and or checking and or looking at on that phone usually are not conducive to us shifting and growing and even defaulting over time into an abundant mindset, right? I want to control my emotions. I want to control my energy from the beginning, from the moment that I wake up. Right? And waking up and looking at your phone immediately, you're surrendering that energy. You are making it very hard to operate an abundant mentality from the morning, from the beginning, right? And you're setting yourself up for failure for the day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I do a gratitude prayer. Very simple, very easy. Before I get out of bed, I pray to God, thank you so much for my life. And I list off 5 simple things that I'm grateful for, right? I'm so grateful to have a bed to sleep on. I'm so grateful to have a roof over my head. I am so grateful for my wife. I'm so grateful for my daughter, and I'm so grateful for the time that I'm going to be able to spend with you here once I get up and moving, right? And so that right there, just so simple, but so effective. I'm already now leveraging abundant mentality through gratitude. So I'm avoiding negativity on my phone, right? Taking control, playing offense, and then I'm leveraging a beautiful ATM, right? Called gratitude. I heard this quote from Robin Sharma that said, gratitude is an ATM. And truthfully is, because of what it does for your energy. And so then from there, I'm a believer. I know all of you guys know this. I've been blessed with so many things in life. I've done a lot of amazing things. I've made a lot of crazy failures as well. But I've been given so many successes, earthly, materialistic successes. And there's nothing inherently wrong with those things. But what it has come to make me realize is that nothing is more important than your relationship with God. Your happiness and your contentment come from God, right? And so every morning after I'm done with those first 2 things, not checking my phone, doing my gratitude, I get up, right? And I go to my island and I pop my Bible open, right? And, a big inspiration for this podcast is Proverbs, right? Which I've mentioned this before, but it was written by an individual by the name of King Solomon, who, if he was alive today, would be the richest person alive, worth $3 trillion. And the crazy part is this man didn't pray to God for wealth. Prayed to God for wisdom, and guess what was a byproduct or a result of him becoming one of the wisest people to ever live? His massive wealth. And so there's a book in the Bible called Proverbs, and my strategy, my go-to is whatever day of the month it is, that's the chapter of Proverbs that I'm reading. So as I'm shooting this, it's the 6th of the month. So I woke up this morning and I read Proverbs 6. The beautiful part is there's 31 chapters in Proverbs, and most times there's 30 to 31 days in a month. And so that's just such an easy way. I read it once to kind of gather what it's saying, and I read it second to see what's standing out to me. Right? I also do something these days where it took me a little bit to not judge myself for this, but after I'm done reading and praying and journaling over what's popping up, I actually just open up my laptop and I type into ChatGPT, what is Proverbs 6 trying to teach me? And based off what you know about me, ChatGPT, how do you think I should be digesting this information? That has been a game changer. It has helped so much with understanding the word and then applying the word. And then I spend my time in prayer, right? Then I go into a 15-minute breathwork session. I'm a big believer in breathwork. I utilize breathwork to get me closer to God. And I heard this quote the other day. It said, "Don't confuse the supplier with the source." Right? So when working out makes us feel so good, breathwork makes us feel so good, meditation makes us feel so good, sometimes we forget that that's the supplier and God's the source. We end up labeling, my breathwork is the source, right? I'm not feeling good today, I must have not done my breathwork. It's like, no, the idea of you doing the breathwork or the meditation or the visualization is ultimately just it's being a supplier to get you closer to the source, which is God. Right? So I hope that little iteration there helps. And then I go to the gym, right? Fitness is so important for energy, right? It is scientifically proven that all of your happy hormones are significantly increased when you work out, which then means that if your happy hormones are significantly increased when you work out, guess what happens? The vibration that your energy that you're carrying is significantly increasing, which is significantly increasing the probability of us attracting better results. Right. And so fitness and nutrition, particularly going to the gym in the morning and getting a good sweat and getting my heart pumping, is huge for all around wealth, but definitely financial. I heard some guy say this, I think it was Tom Bailu, a couple of years ago. And he was like, it's no surprise to me that the majority of rich guys that I know are jacked. They're ripped. They're in really good shape. Right? Because there is a strong correlation to success, to money, to what you're attracting. Because if you're massively increasing your happy hormones each day, you're going to massively increase what you're attracting as a result. And so I hit the sauna afterwards, do a meditation in there. And so just giving you some ideas here. I'm not saying do all of these things, but the idea to go back to what I was saying before was that, like, I think the abundance that you carry in your life, particularly the abundance that becomes autopilot, right, or automatic over time, is strongly correlated to the habits that you have in your life that increase abundance for you. And so I know a lot of you probably already know this and or are doing these things, but the consistency is the difference, the intentionality behind it, right? And I think the biggest thing is just making sure that the priority is God. The priority is God, right? If your foundations are in God, right, everything else will take care of itself. It really will. It's not saying that you just sit back and do nothing, but like the self-reliance and the free will, it becomes a lot easier to understand what God is calling you to do when you're leaning in on him more, right, and growing closer to him. And so if you want the best life possible, you must co-create it with God. The only way that you can co-create it with God is being able to hear from God. The only time you hear from God is by reading your Bible and spending time in prayer and quiet time, right? And so not to say that you can't hear from God in other ways, but those are the significant ways that you normally do. And so I wanted to give you that, those bits, if you want, how to shift into that abundant mindset, right? And so how is this correlated to finances? I know I've said it multiple times, or at least given you some ideas here, but simply put, like, it's the biggest needle mover in your finances. It truthfully is. You could have the best systems and strategies and masculine side of finances. Like, you could be a great budgeter, a great saver, a great investor, right? And those things are very important. They're very, very important, right? But you're never going to reach your full potential until you pair those things with what I'm talking about here today, which is the abundance mentality, the abundance mindset, shifting from scarcity to abundance, having ultimate faith, right? That life is gonna work out and there's always enough, especially if you're playing your part and being diligent and you're building your relationship with God. Of course, things are gonna work out, right? Even if, I'm not saying that the strategies, the systems, and the budgeting and the investing and the whole masculine, the black and white side of things isn't important. It's very, very important, because you're not going to woo-woo and meditate your way to financial freedom. You do need the strategy and the masculine. But we have found at my company, JFF, Journey to Financial Freedom, where we do financial coaching for the faith-based and ambitious, is that when you compare both of these buckets, the black and white or the masculine, with the woo, right, with the spiritual side, with enhancing your energy, because money is energy, that's where you ultimately get best results. So even in my own personal life, I said in the beginning of this, I was a very black and white person by trade. And I'd say about 4 years ago, I got to a point in business where I could not break through this glass ceiling of income. Like, what is happening here? I've got all the best systems in the world. My mentors are amazing. We're doing incredible things, but I can't break through this monthly income amount. And I heard God say, go within, go internal. Your highest leverage point is the human being behind the money. Heal him and watch the glass ceiling break. And that's ultimately what happened. And so I think until you have strong faith that God is working in your, God is working in your favor. I don't know why I just blanked on that word. Very easy word, right? Until you have strong faith that God is working in your favor, right? And that understanding that we serve a God of abundance, right? We don't serve a God of scarcity. Right? The only time that God holds abundance back from us is when we put that self-inflicted cap on the amount of abundance that we're attracting, right? And so just something to think about. It's like, are you playing your part when it comes to stewarding your money to the best of your ability, right? By managing it well, having the right systems and strategies in place, right? While also correcting your energy, shifting from scarcity to abundance, simply put, having faith, right? That God is going to provide, especially if you're playing your part and letting him play his part. And so my question to all of you, are you welcoming abundance or are you blocking it? There's no in between, right? I mean, there is a little bit of a gray area. Don't get me wrong. Like some hours you can be welcoming it, some hours you can't be. But for the majority of the time that you're awake and operating each day, right? Are you blocking abundance or are you attracting it, right? And so I want you to ponder that question. And because a lot of times the limitations that we have on our finances are self-imposed. The limitations we have on our finances, the limitations that we have on God unleashing the blessings and prosperity we want in our life usually are self-imposed, right? It's through not stewarding our current situation correctly, which is a huge block for God blessing you with more. If you're not managing and grateful and doing your best to handle your current situation, why in the world would God bless you with more? It's usually one of our biggest hindrance that we put on ourselves of having a better financial situation. And then the other one is just the energy that we're carrying. Right? Sometimes when I meet people and I talk to them, or even myself some days, I'm like, it is clear why you're not having the best month financially, why things are, you just can't get out of this financial rut. It's just the energy that you are carrying is just continuously attracting that. And so I want to close on, do your best to speak abundance, believe in God's provision, and trust that as long as you're doing your part, the best possible reality is already on its way. So what we talked about here today, I hope it provided different iterations, different perspectives, different motivations, different inspirations, and strong expert correlations to money. I think you guys hear probably a lot of this before, maybe different forms of it, and definitely related to money, but it's just one thing that, I'm not the richest and wealthiest person that you'll come across, but I'm very proud of the wealth, the financial one that I have grown. And have done over the years, and the successes that I've had, and coupled with the failures, which I've gotten a lot of wisdom from as well. They definitely haven't been perfect, but one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing that I've learned, is the number one needle mover for your finances is shifting from a scarcity mentality to an abundant mentality, because you will never outperform the view that you have of something, right? You'll never outperform the energy that you're putting out into the world, right? And so take this lesson, listen to it again, and share it with somebody that you think would benefit. If you've got a partner, if you've got somebody that is strongly dictating your energy and your money situation like a partner, I highly suggest sharing this message with them. Right? Me and, like I said, my wife and I, this is the number one conversation we're having. How are we correcting? We call it our middle class mindset, right? Which is scarcity mindset, right? What are we doing that is scarcity and middle class, and how can we shift it to be more abundant? And so thank you all again for coming back to another episode of, I almost just said the old podcast name. A lot of you guys know we recently rebranded. But thank you again for coming back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth. I hope that this was helpful for you. As always, subscribe, download, and share, and we'll see you on the next episode.